Strategy. I love strategy games. They really appeal to my inner megalomaniac and are definitely one of my favourite kinds of game. I can't deny it, there's little I love more than spending entire weekends of my life accruing spectacular wealth, building humongous armies, and wielding them in a terrifying dictatorial fashion before all who dare oppose me. And hey, if you like strategy games too, then you owe it to yourself to pick up a copy of Empire Total War. It's definitely one of the best, most involving and most refined games in this genre, and it's truly immense in scale. So immense, in fact, that at first it can be overwhelming, and what you're meant to do and how you're supposed to get on top of things really isn't very clear. Which is where this Getting Started tutorial comes in. I'm going to give you a few tips and guidelines that will help you get to grips with some of the basic aspects of the game, and with any luck you'll be conquering away in no time. So before we begin proper, a little pre-tutorial tip. By default, the grand campaign will be set to a short campaign. My advice when you're starting out is to choose the long campaign. The reason for that is the short campaign lasts for 50 years and you really need to have your tactics planned out so you hit certain milestones at key points and there isn't really much room for error. The long campaign has you conquering more regions to meet its victory conditions, but crucially, it gives you an extra 50 years to do it. What this means is that you get a lot more time to plan out what you're going to do, and a lot more time to build up your strength before carrying out your plans, and more times to make a few mistakes without having to start again. Tip number 1 is get to know your nation by using lists. The first thing you should do when you get dropped into a grand campaign is to get to know your nation. Make sure you listen to the helpful tutorial lady who will take you on a brief tour of your borders and give you some hints about what you should be thinking about tactically in the early stages of the campaign. Then you should familiarise yourself with your armies, your navy, your agents and your regions. Thankfully, there's an incredibly useful info panel called Lists which will help you do this very thing. You can find it in the bottom right hand corner of the HUD, or you can use the hotkey L to bring it up. So let's do that now. Here we are, the list panel, and it certainly does what it says in the tin. It lists all your armies, your navies, all your regions, with some really useful information about your region's health, and finally all your agents. So this is probably the most useful tip I can give you. At the beginning of every turn, go straight for the list panel, and make sure that you check the status of everything. Make sure that all of your units are working towards your overall plan, whatever that may be, and that nothing is left idle, because it can be very easy to lose track of what all your units are up to. Make sure that all your armies and navies are correctly positioned, and that all of your agents are doing the job they're supposed to be. And finally, you need to make sure that your regions are all in tip-top health, which brings me neatly onto tip number 2. Okay, tip number 2 is tend to your population. The population of all your regions should always be increasing, and if it's not, then something is wrong and you need to fix it ASAP. Now, why is an increasing population so important? Well, there are two main reasons. Firstly, the higher the population, the more people there are to extract tax from, which makes you richer. A good thing, I think we can all agree. Secondly, the more your population increases, the more villages will get turned into towns. So if you have a look here, you can see a village. It looks like a collection of small huts and it's currently useless to you. Its only use really is that it has the potential to one day turn into a town. Now a town looks like this, and you can build things in a town that will be of benefit. Basically, the more towns you have, the better. So let's turn to the ever useful list panel to check out how my population is faring. It's not so good. As you can see, 3 of my regions have decreasing population at this point, indicated by these downward arrows. So I need to get right on that and sort things out. How do I do that, you ask? What sorts of things can affect population? Well, there are a few. Firstly, your farms. You need to upgrade all your farms as much as possible, as early as possible, and research the early farm-related technologies. This will give you an excellent boost in population. Secondly, fisheries. When a village that is by a coast, like this one here, gets upgraded by a population increase, it becomes a port. And you can convert ports into fisheries, which will give you a nice boost to your population also. Of course, ports can be used for other things as well, such as building warships or acting as a trade route. So think carefully about what you want to do with your ports before taking the plunge either way. Thirdly, tax rates. Tax rates affect population. So if a region is doing particularly badly, you can either reduce your overall tax rate by going to the government panel and lowering the rates, or you can exempt a particular region from paying any tax at all, which will usually temporarily fix any population problems a region is having. So there you have it, tend to your population. It doesn't have the same immediate impact of, say, building loads of troops and annihilating your nearest neighbour, but it's definitely the best platform you can build for yourself at the start of the game. Tip 3, making lots of money. Whatever your ambitions are in the game, it's pretty much a given that in order to achieve them, you will need great big piles of cash. Well, there are a number of ways to do this. Firstly, there's tax. As previously discussed, having a large and ever-increasing population will enable you to extract more and more money via taxation. Be careful though, as high tax rates have a seriously detrimental effect on the happiness of your citizens. You can exempt a region from paying any tax at any time by opening up that region's information panel and clicking here. This will usually have such a positive effect on your citizens that any problems you are having with them will magically disappear. Secondly, there's trade. Now, explaining all of the intricate nuances of Empire Total War's trade system would take some time, but the basics are as follows. Some, though not all, of your regions produce goods. You can see here that Sweden produces furs. These goods-producing areas can be upgraded in much the same way as farms and fisheries can be, by paying for upgrades to the buildings that increase yield and researching technologies that allow further upgrades. That's just one side of the story though, and once you're producing ample goods, you need a trade network on which to transport and sell them. Now, trade networks work like this. Every empire has a home region. Britain's is England, France's is France, Sweden's is Sweden, and so on. And all of your goods-producing regions have to transport those goods back to the home region before they can be exported to other nations and converted into cash. For this reason, it's wise to have the biggest commercial port in your home region that your technology will allow, because the bigger the commercial port, the more trade routes you can have coming out of that port, and the more nations you can therefore ally with as trade partners. Now, you can trade goods over land, but it's far more likely that there will be a nation that lies between you and your trade partner who won't let your goods pass over their territory. So, there's another way of explaining this. You can see in this game that I'm already quite far into, playing as Great Britain, that here in my supply panel, I have various goods coming into my home region of England from regions in North America, as well as other goods coming in from the East Indies and Ivory Coast, and Brazil. And then down here you can see all my trade partners and the goods that I'm exporting to them from England. These route indicators show you how the goods are being transported, and also whether or not the goods are getting through, either because there's a hostile nation between you and the destination of your goods, or because someone is pirating your trade route over the sea. These little green lines here are your sea trade routes, and you can see who is trading on them and how much cash they're making from them by hovering over with the mouse. Now, when a pirate flag is flashing over a ship like this, it means that that ship is pirating goods from that trade route, though not necessarily from yours. Trade has the potential to be a massive source of income for you, but how you affect what's going on in it isn't exactly intuitive and will take a little getting used to. If you open up the government panel, you can see the overall balance sheet for your nation, and I find it can help to keep a pencil and pad next to your keyboard and to jot down from turn to turn what's going on. You can also see via this panel what's having a draining effect on your economy. Undoubtedly, the most expensive thing you can do is build big armies and navies. It's tempting to dive straight in and build large standing armies, but this will seriously hamper you in the early stages. Often the armies you start with only require minimal reinforcements to allow you to fend off any would-be early invaders. And it's a much better idea to build your population and trade network up before planning any big military campaigns. When you decide you're ready to attack though, this is what you should do. Tip 4 is all about readying for war. First and foremost, you need an economy that can support your military ambitions, so make sure that you've carried out tips 2 and 3, because if you don't, it won't matter that you've built a big army with your starting cash and crushed your nearest neighbour. You're going to have insurmountable problems before very long. Once you have a steadily increasing economy, however, it's time to make some plans. It's important to know what you want to achieve with each military campaign. Then you can build your forces accordingly, go out and achieve them, and then take stock. Don't get trigger happy and overstretch yourself without carefully thinking through the consequences first. Once you've captured a new region, it's going to cost you money and time to reinforce your battle-weary forces. You also need to put money and effort into quelling any rebellion that might be brewing from the discontented population. as well as thinking about any attempts your enemy might make to recapture the region. On top of all of this, the region you just captured will at first be a burden on your economy, and you will need to invest in it in order to get it to a stage where it's profitable. So, the mantra should be, know what you want to achieve, build your army accordingly, go out and achieve it, then take stock and reinforce. Being recklessly gung-ho will get you in a lot of trouble. So, that's it. Hopefully, you're now a bit better equipped to be manning the helm. The best of luck to you and your empire.